This is my friend Saeed. Met him about a year ago. I believe the term is Guyanese.
Guyanese, yeah. My parents are from Guyana. It's in South America, right by Suriname area, Colombia, northeastern part of South America. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about your nationality. What would you say your nationality is? Is it Guyanese or?
Yeah, so my parents are from Guyana, so I would consider myself Guyanese, being from that country. However, Guyana is heavily influenced from Indian descent. So my parents are actually from Indian descent. My parents' grandparents were actually slaves brought over from India through the slave trade back in the day, and brought over to Guyana to help colonize Guyana as a British colony. So Guyana was actually a British colony. Yeah, so it's actually from Indian descent directly.
Cool.
Yeah.
And your last name is Hill. I've always thought that was a weird Saeed Hill.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
The last name Hill is a slave name, basically. So from the British influence, a lot of the names were forced to be changed.
Yeah.
Slave names, and so Hill was actually a name given to my family.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So that's your actual slave name. You just have kept it through what, 3 generations?
Yeah, it's been, let's see, I don't know, how many generations is that? That would be my great-grandparents, my grandparents, then my parents, then me.
So fourth
generation.
4 generations in the United States?
Actually, my great-grandparents stayed in Guyana, so they helped colonize Guyana. My grandparents were born in Guyana, raised there, and then my parents were born and raised there. The first family members actually come over to the United States. My first family member was my mother in the 1970s.
Why did she decide to come over?
For school, for a better opportunity. Guyana historically hasn't been a fantastic place, actually. There's a lot of violence and other things going on there, and a lot of internal wars through actually the slaves from India versus the slaves from Africa. Actually, there's a lot of African slaves that were brought over as well, and a lot of territorial issues. So Guyana hasn't been a great place for a while with violence and stuff. And so my mom wanted a better opportunity, so she went to Queens Community College, actually, in New York. My mom went to New York, and then my dad later joined in the 1980s.
Why did your dad stay behind?
My dad stayed behind for work purposes, so it's awfully difficult to leave Guyana a lot, and so he had to stay and get some money together so he can join her out there and help her out, and so he stayed behind. My mom, I think, came to New York in probably 1977, and my dad joined her in 1981.
How did you guys make it to Kansas?
Yeah, so my dad and my mom both actually worked for, my dad at the time worked for Sprint. And so I was actually, raised in New York. And so I was raised in New York. My dad was transferred with his job. His job transferred him to Atlanta, Georgia, actually.
Yeah.
And so I actually lived in Georgia, the suburbs of Atlanta for, a good 6-7 years or so. And then my dad again got transferred from Georgia to Kansas City. So my parents live in Olathe right now, and so that's where I'm at.
So you've had New York, Georgia, and now here.
And now Kansas, so yeah.
And so your dad worked for Sprint?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, really cool.
Did your mom go to college?
She went to community college for a couple of years, yeah.
She got a degree or graduated?
Yeah, she got a degree, and now she's a team lead / supervisor at Sprint as well. She actually ended up starting to work at Sprint when we moved to Georgia. She got a job at Sprint as well, so she's still there.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 2 older sisters. Actually, my older sisters I'm 23 as of today. Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
So thanks, I appreciate it. So my sisters are actually 37 and 38 years old, so they're significantly older than me.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, but I do have 2 older sisters. One lives in New York still with her family. She has a husband and 4 kids, and my other sister lives in Toronto, Canada. I have a lot of family around Toronto area as well.
So would you say that's a culture thing to have big families? Culture?
I'd say so. I mean, especially, I think almost everybody, all cultures had bigger families, back in the day. My grandparents on my mom's side, they actually had 7 children, including my mom. My mom was the youngest of 7. And my dad, on his side, his parents had 5 children. He was the youngest of 5. And each one of those, children had 5 children, and each one of those children have now had 5 children. So I have, third, fourth, fifth cousins removed from something, all over the place. So yeah.
Cool.
What about like gender roles? Like
Yeah.
how is the women under?
Yeah, so gender roles.
Women under the men.
Well, gender roles actually, specifically, interestingly enough, women typically run my family. So, we actually have the group of. I said my mom's parents had 7 children, and there's 5 daughters in that, and they're kind of the core group that keeps the family together. So they boss everybody around, and what they say goes. So my dad, I guess in our household, my dad would have final say, but my mom really runs the show, in terms of, everyday to-day activities.
Do you think that's just your household or an overall culture thing?
Actually, I think it might be more similar to my household. I think culturally, a lot of the times the men are a little bit more dominant than the females are, in their roles. But in my whole household specifically, my mom, she kind of ran the show, for, a long time. So.
What about your parents' religion?
Religion, yes. Actually, I was raised Catholic and Muslim, actually, at the same time.
That is weird right there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So my mom, her parents, we kind of went predominantly with them. My mom's parents, my grandmother was Catholic, and my grandfather was Muslim. When they got married, my grandfather wanted my grandmother to convert, and she would not. And but he still wanted to marry her, so he asked if they could have a Muslim ceremony. So they had a Muslim ceremony, got married that way, but he allowed her to continue on with her Catholic faith. So as I was growing up, as my mom was growing up, I should say, my mom and her sisters were raised both, Catholic and Muslim, knowing both, predominantly Muslim for a long time. And then when my parents, had me, then it became, you're going to be raised as both, so you'll know both. So it was probably more heavily dominated Islam. It's more dominated toward Islam, so more of my family members are Muslims. However, my mom did convert full-time to Catholicism probably about 10 years ago. So, yeah. My dad's actually Methodist. So it's a lot of stuff like that going on. So my dad is actually a Methodist. He was raised a Methodist. His family was Muslim and Methodist. So...
Wow.
What do you practice?
Me, having learned both and being heavily, put into religion, I've kind of come to the realization for myself that organized religion for me isn't. I feel like if I chose one, then it would be like I was saying one was more correct or something. Like I chose one over the other, and I don't like doing that. So I actually don't really put myself as any kind of label. I kind of have my own relationship with God that I feel, is adequate for myself, and that's kind of how I practice that way. So with my family, that can cause some tensions here and there, but it's really the younger generations that are moving more away from what organized Islam means or what organized Catholicism means, and really defining for themselves what religion is. So.
It's not causing rifts, though.
No, there's not huge, significant family rifts. I'll still participate in those, family, if we're having Muslim ceremonies for something, or if, to go to Catholic church, maybe, over Christmas time, if my mom would like me to go with her or something like that, I'll definitely do that. I'm not cut off completely from it. However, it's just for myself personally, I don't feel like I need to choose one or be one.
Are you really close with your parents?
Yes, and that's something it could be somewhat cultural, but, it's very collectivistic kind of family and societies. So you grow up, learning to really kind of obey your parents, do what your parents want you to do. But I think now that I have more of an adult relationship with my parents, it's a little bit more like a friendship. But I'm extremely close to my dad and my mom both. They're actually taking me out to Fogo de Chao tonight for my birthday, so I'm excited. Never went before, so
Cool.
We'll pick up the bill. That'll be nice.
Yeah, it's a big deal there.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
What about marriage? Can you marry anybody? Has it always been like that?
Yeah, actually, and it's kind of interesting within our family is that there's more of those traditional Muslims in my family and ones that are a little bit more liberal in terms of things. And so my family, my immediate family, is very much more of the liberal side of things. So they're accepting of all people. It doesn't matter how I'd want to get married or anything like that. They would like.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it is nice. If
but isn't there almost a is it your sister, somebody that's married to a PhD, or is there a difference for
Yeah.
you, like if your parents were on whether or not you marry a doctor or
Yeah, so that's
versus a nurse or whatever it
Yeah.
may be?
yeah. My parents, going along with that is that there is a certain sense of what's the word I'm looking for? A status, I guess. And so, you know, especially with I say Indian parents, but I'll say specifically my parents, and I think it can be attributed to a culture. Status is important, and so, you know, being doctors and lawyers and things, very prestigious American titles, is the preferred method to go. So if I can land myself a doctor, then wow, you know, that's amazing. But, you know, for the most part, my parents would be accepting of anybody, you know, any race, culture, whatever it may be. They'll try to work with that. They're very liberal-minded in that way. And so, no, I don't have to be married as a Muslim or as a Catholic. They would like, when I do get married, for it to be, to have some of those cultural kind of things involved in it. So maybe like a rehearsal dinner, maybe having an Indian kind of rehearsal dinner theme, and maybe, you know, having Ave Maria, which is, you know, a traditional Catholic song, be sang at my wedding, in remembrance for my grandmother and my Catholic side of my family.